I went on a fishing trip with my uncle near Montauk, New York back in August 2022. It was supposed to be a chill weekend. Just me and him on his boat trying to catch some striped bass. We left early Saturday morning around 5 a.m. when it was still pitch black outside. The ocean was dead calm, like glass, which my uncle said was perfect fishing weather. We got to our spot about 6 miles offshore and dropped anchor. For the first 2 hours, everything felt completely normal. I had no idea we were about to pull something out of that water that would haunt me forever. Around 2 hours in, my uncle's line suddenly went tight. Like, violently tight. He thought he caught something massive because his rod was bending so hard it looked like it might snap in half. He started reeling it in, grunting and struggling with whatever was on the other end. I grabbed the net and leaned over the side, ready to help him pull it up. When the line finally came close to the surface, we both saw what was attached to the hook, and I swear my heart just stopped. It wasn't a fish. It was a hand. A pale, bloated human hand still attached to part of an arm. The skin all wrinkled and gray from being underwater. My uncle let out the scream he'd never heard from him before, and dropped his rod. The hand sank back down and vanished into that black water below us. But here's the thing that still messes with my head. The fingers on that hand were moving. We just stood there frozen, neither of us able to speak or move. My uncle finally snapped out of it and reached for his phone to call the Coast Guard. But before he could even unlock his screen, we heard it. This loud, metallic banging sound coming from directly underneath the boat, slow and deliberate, like something was trying to get our attention. My uncle's face went completely white. The banging got louder, faster, more aggressive. Then the boat started rocking hard, even though the ocean around us was still flat and calm. Something was down there, and it knew we were up here. I forced myself to look over the side of the boat, and that's when I saw it moving in the water. This dark shape, long and thin like a person, but way too stretched out, circling us slowly just below the surface. It wasn't swimming like a fish or a shark. It was gliding, smooth and purposeful, with these long appendages that kept reaching up toward the bottom of our boat. Every time it passed underneath us, the banging would start again, like it was testing the hull, trying to find a weak spot. My uncle was screaming into his phone now, giving our coordinates to the Coast Guard. They said someone would be there in 30 minutes. 30 minutes felt like an eternity when something was actively hunting us from below. Then I saw the face, just for a split second. It broke the surface about 10 feet from the boat, and I felt my legs almost give out. It looked human, but everything about it was wrong. The eyes were huge and completely black. No whites at all, just these empty dark holes staring right into me. And the mouth, Jesus Christ. The mouth opened so wide I could see rows of these thin needle-like teeth going all the way back. It smiled at me. I'm not kidding. This thing smiled, like it was enjoying watching me realize what was happening. Then it slipped back underwater without making a single splash. The banging stopped. The silence that followed was so much worse, because now I couldn't tell where it was. My uncle didn't wait another second. He fired up the engine and screamed at me to hold on. But the moment that engine roared to life, the thing surfaced again, this time right next to the boat, so close I could have reached out and touched it. One of those long arms shot up out of the water and grabbed onto our railing. I saw its hand clearly now. The fingers were webbed and gray, with black claws that dug into the metal, and the skin looked slimy, almost translucent. My uncle slammed the throttle all the way forward and we lurched ahead. That thing held on. It was being dragged through the water, and I watched its face the entire time, those black eyes locked on mine, still smiling. It held on for what felt like forever before it finally let go and sank back down into the deep. We didn't stop. We didn't look back. We just ran. When the Coast Guard finally went out there to investigate later that day, they found absolutely nothing. No body parts. No signs of anything unusual in the water. They told us we probably saw a decomposed seal, or maybe some trash that looked strange in the moment. They made us feel like idiots. But I know what I saw. I know what grabbed our boat and held on while we tried to escape. My uncle sold his boat 2 weeks later and refuses to even talk about that day. I haven't stepped foot in the ocean since, and honestly, I don't think I ever will again. Because sometimes late at night, when I close my eyes, I still see that face breaking through the surface. I still see those black eyes staring into mine. And I still see that smile, like it was telling me it would remember me. Whatever's out there in the deep water off Montauk, it's real. And the scariest part is, I think it wanted us to see it. I think it wanted us to know it exists. My name is Jake, and I used to be a commercial diver working on oil rigs off the coast of Louisiana. The pay was insane, like 80 grand a year, but the work was dangerous as hell. You're going down 150, sometimes 200 feet in pitch black water, fixing pipes and checking equipment in conditions that could kill you in seconds if something goes wrong. I did it for 3 years without any major incidents. That changed in October 2021, and it's the reason I'll never go underwater again. We were working on a rig about 40 miles south of Grand Isle, doing routine maintenance on some underwater pipelines. It was me and another diver named Marcus going down that day. The water was murky as usual. Visibility maybe 5 feet max with our lights on. We got our dive plan from the supervisor, checked our equipment, and went in around 11 a.m. The descent was normal. We communicated through our radios, just standard stuff, confirming depths and checking in every few minutes. When we hit 180 feet, we found the section of pipe we needed to inspect. It was a straightforward job, just looking for cracks or corrosion and taking some measurements. Marcus was on one end, and I was about 30 feet away on the other end. We'd been down there for maybe 20 minutes when I heard Marcus's voice come through my radio. He said, "Hey Jake, you seeing this?" I asked him what he was talking about. He said there was something moving in the water past the pipeline, something big. I told him it was probably just a shark or a big grouper. We saw those all the time down there. But then his voice came back, and he sounded different. Nervous. He said, "No man, this ain't no fish. It's shaped wrong." I swam over toward his position, and that's when my light caught something in the distance. There was definitely something out there, just beyond where our lights could reach clearly. It looked like it was hovering in place, not swimming, just floating there watching us. The shape was tall and narrow, and I could see what looked like arms hanging down at its sides. My first thought was that it was another diver, maybe someone from a different crew. But that didn't make sense. Nobody else was supposed to be in the water. Marcus started backing up toward me, keeping his light pointed at the thing. He said into the radio, "I'm getting a bad feeling about this, bro. We should head up." I agreed with him. Something about the way that shape was just hanging there in the water felt wrong. We started ascending slowly, following protocol, but keeping our eyes on it the whole time. That's when it moved. Not toward us, but parallel, like it was circling around to cut us off from the surface. And it moved fast, way faster than anything that size should be able to move underwater. I got on the radio to the surface team and told them we had something in the water with us and we were coming up early. The supervisor asked what it was, and I told him I didn't know, but it was big and it was following us. Marcus was breathing heavy into his radio now. I could hear the panic in his voice. He said, "Jake, there's more of them. Look to your left." I turned my head and pointed my light. And sure enough, there were 2 more of those shapes, one above us and one below, just hovering in that same creepy way. We were surrounded. The thing that was in front of us started coming closer. My light finally got a clear look at it, and I felt every hair on my body stand up. It had a human shape, but it was all wrong. The body was too long, stretched out like someone had pulled it apart. The arms reached down past where its knees should be. And the head, God, the head was massive. Way too big for the body, with these dark hollow spots where eyes should be. The skin looked gray and slick, almost see-through in some spots. It didn't have a face, just this blank surface with a crack-like opening where a mouth would be. Marcus screamed into the radio. He said the one below us just grabbed his fin. I looked down and saw him kicking frantically, trying to get free. His light was swinging around wildly, and I caught glimpses of long fingers wrapped around his ankle. I dove down toward him and pulled my dive knife out. I didn't know what else to do. When I got close, I slashed at the arm holding him. The blade went right through it, like cutting through jelly, and this thick black cloud exploded into the water. It wasn't blood. It was something else. Something that made the water around it shimmer and distort. Marcus broke free, and we both started ascending as fast as we safely could. We were at 140 feet when I felt something wrap around my waist from behind. It was cold. So cold it burned through my wetsuit. I tried to reach back with my knife, but I couldn't twist around enough. Marcus saw what was happening and swam back down toward me. He grabbed whatever was holding me and pulled at it. His hands went right through it, just like my knife did, and another one of those black clouds burst out. Whatever was holding me let go, and we shot upward again. I could see the shapes chasing us now, all three of them, moving in this synchronized way like they were working together. They stayed just out of reach of our lights, pacing us as we climbed. At 80 feet, one of them rushed forward and I saw its face up close for the first time. That crack opened up and there were no teeth inside, just this black void that seemed to go on forever. It opened its mouth so wide I could have fit my whole head inside. We broke through some thermocline around 60 feet, and suddenly the water got warmer. The shape stopped following us. They just hovered right at that temperature line, like they couldn't or wouldn't cross it. We kept ascending and didn't stop until we surfaced. The crew pulled us onto the platform and we both just collapsed, ripping our masks off and gasping. Marcus was crying. I'd never seen him cry before. We tried to explain what happened, but nobody believed us. They said we had nitrogen narcosis, or we were seeing things from being too deep. They sent another dive team down with cameras an hour later to check the area. The cameras didn't catch anything unusual, just empty water and the pipeline. But here's what messed me up. When they reviewed the footage, there were these strange distortions in the video at certain points, like something was interfering with the signal. And at one point, for just a few frames, you could see something in the background. It was blurry, but it had that same tall, stretched-out shape we saw. Marcus quit the next day and moved back to Texas. He won't answer my calls anymore. I stayed on for another week before I realized I couldn't do it. Every time I looked at the water, I felt sick. The company tried to convince me it was just a hallucination from the depth, but I know what I saw. I know what grabbed me down there. There's something living in the deep parts of the Gulf, something that's been there way longer than any of us. And I think the only reason we made it out was because we crossed into warmer water. I think about what would have happened if we hadn't. I think about that mouth opening up and that endless black void inside it. I haven't worked as a diver since. I live in Dallas now, as far from the ocean as I can get in this state. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I'm back down there at 180 feet, and I can feel those cold fingers wrapping around me again. I can see those shapes circling in the darkness, just waiting. And the worst part is knowing they're still down there right now, waiting for the next diver to come too close. I worked as a lifeguard at Huntington Beach in California during the summer of 2020. It was my last week on the job before heading back to college, and I was working the evening shift that ended at sunset. The beach was almost empty that day because of some weird weather warnings about riptides. Just a few stragglers packing up their stuff. I was doing my final sweep of the water before closing up the tower when I saw her. There was a woman standing in the water about 50 yards out, completely still. The waves were crashing around her, but she wasn't moving at all, just standing there with the water up to her waist. I grabbed my binoculars to get a better look. She was facing away from the shore, staring out at the horizon. Something about her posture felt off, too rigid, like a mannequin. I called out to her through the megaphone, told her the beach was closing and she needed to come in. She didn't respond, didn't even turn around. I radioed my supervisor and told him I had someone in the water who wasn't responding. He said to go get her and bring her in. I ran down to the water and started swimming out toward her position. The current was strong that day, and it took me a few minutes to reach her. When I got about 10 feet away, I called out again. She still didn't move. I swam closer, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Her feet weren't touching the bottom. The water there was at least 8 feet deep. She was just hovering there, perfectly still, like something was holding her up. I said, "Ma'am, are you okay?" And she slowly started turning around to face me. The movement was wrong, too smooth, like she was on a turntable. When she finally faced me, I saw her eyes. They were completely white, no pupils, just blank white orbs. Her mouth was open, but nothing came out. Then she smiled at me, this wide, unnatural smile that stretched way too far across her face. I started backing up in the water, my training completely forgotten. All I could think was get away from her. That's when she dropped, just straight down into the water, like someone cut the strings holding her up. She vanished beneath the surface without a splash, like she was pulled under by something. I dove down to try to find her, thinking she was drowning, but the water was too dark and murky. I couldn't see anything. I surfaced and looked around frantically. Nothing. She was just gone. I swam back to shore as fast as I could, my heart hammering in my chest. When I told my supervisor what happened, he looked at me like I was insane. He called the police and they sent a boat out to search the area. They didn't find any body, no evidence anyone had been in the water at all. The cops asked me if I'd been drinking or if I was on something. I wasn't. I know what I saw. That woman was real, but what was keeping her floating wasn't. The worst part came 3 days later when I was scrolling through missing persons reports online, trying to find her. I found a report from 2 weeks earlier about a woman who drowned at that exact beach. When I saw her photo, my blood went cold. It was her. Same face, same hair, everything. She'd been dead for 2 weeks, but I saw her standing in that water, smiling at me with those white eyes. I quit the next day and moved back home to Arizona. I never told anyone the full story because I knew they wouldn't believe me. But sometimes, I wonder if she's still out there, standing in that same spot, waiting for the next person to swim out to her. And I wonder what would have happened if I'd gotten any closer before she went under. I think about those white eyes and that impossible smile, and I know I'll never swim in the ocean again. Some things aren't meant to be saved. Some things are meant to pull you down with them. I was surfing at Mavericks Beach near Half Moon Bay, California, in October 2022. It's known for having some of the biggest waves on the West Coast, and that day they were perfect. I'd been out there for maybe an hour, catching some solid rides, when I noticed the water around me getting weirdly calm, like unnaturally calm. The waves just stopped coming, and the ocean turned flat as glass. Every surfer knows that's not normal. I was sitting on my board waiting to see what would happen when I felt something brush against my leg underwater. Light at first like seaweed, but then it wrapped around my ankle and squeezed. Hard. I looked down into the water and saw this thick rope-like thing coiled around my leg. But it wasn't a rope. It was moving, pulsing, and it had this dark red color with white spots all over it. I realized it was a tentacle. A massive tentacle. I started panicking and trying to pull my leg free, but it just tightened more. Then I felt another one wrap around my other leg. I was getting dragged down. I took the biggest breath I could and went under, reaching for my leg leash to cut it, thinking maybe I could slip out of it. That's when I saw what was holding me. There was something huge down there in the murky water, something with way too many arms spreading out in every direction. And in the center of all those tentacles, I saw an eye. One giant eye the size of a basketball, staring right at me. The thing pulled me deeper, and I was fighting with everything I had, kicking and thrashing. But it was like fighting against steel cables. My lungs were screaming for air. I was maybe 15 feet down when I remembered my board was still attached to my ankle. I grabbed the leash and pulled the board down toward me, then used the fin to slash at the tentacle. The edge of the fin cut into it, and this black ink exploded everywhere, clouding the water. The tentacles released me instantly, and I shot toward the surface. I broke through, gasping and coughing up seawater. I didn't even look back. I just started paddling towards shore as fast as humanly possible. My arms felt like they were on fire, but I didn't stop. When I was maybe 50 feet from the beach, I turned around to see if it was following me. The water behind me was churning and bubbling like something massive was moving just below the surface. Then I saw one of those tentacles rise up out of the water, at least 20 feet in the air, covered in those same white spots. It just hovered there for a few seconds like it was watching me, then slipped back down. I made it to shore and collapsed on the sand, shaking and trying to catch my breath. A couple of other surfers ran over asking if I was okay. I told them something grabbed me out there, something big. One guy laughed and said I probably just got tangled in kelp. But when I looked down at my legs, there were these perfect circular marks all over my ankles and calves. Sucker marks. Deep red welts in neat little patterns. Those weren't from kelp. I reported it to the Harbor Patrol, and they said they'd look into it, but I could tell they thought I was exaggerating. 2 days later, I saw a news article about a great white shark that washed up dead on a beach about 5 miles from where I was surfing. The article said marine biologists were confused because the shark had massive sucker marks all over its body and chunks of flesh missing. Whatever killed it was big enough to take down a 15-foot shark. I still have scars on my legs from those sucker marks. They never fully went away. And I never went back to Mavericks Beach. Hell, I sold all my surfing gear and moved inland to Sacramento. People think I'm crazy when I tell them what happened. But I know what I felt down there. I know what that eye looked like staring at me in the dark water. There's something living off the coast of Half Moon Bay that's bigger than anything we're supposed to know about. And it's hungry.